History shows the record of different stories of madness and people who took things to the extreme. However, none come close to the story of the most dreaded madman in history, Adolf Hitler. In this video, we will be exploring the life of Adolf Hitler and all that you should know about his early life, his drive, political schemes, rise to power, and overall how his actions changed the course of history, especially in World War II. Stay till the end of this video to find out the most evil thing Hitler ever did, the early life of Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler, also named Der Führer, was born on 20th April 1889 in Braunau am Inn, Austria, into the family of Alois Hitler. His father, Alois Hitler, was considered an outcast, and as such bore his mother's name Schicklgruber until 1876 when he fully adopted Hitler as the family's name. Thus, Adolf never adopted another surname except for Hitler. After his father retired from active service, Adolf Hitler spent most of his time growing up in the capital of Upper Austria, Linz. The city soon became his favorite, and he even made a wish to be buried there after his death. When his father died, he left enough money for his wife and children to live with. Although Adolf Hitler grew up as a seemingly normal kid, he had a burning hatred for his father and an endearing love for his mother. Hitler hated his father because he was harsh and distant, but clinged to his mother, who was an emotional support to him. Hitler was a victim of continuous bullying from peers and seniors, and this made him stay isolated in school. This greatly affected his academics, as young Hitler could not focus in school. Due to his imbalanced record in academics, Adolf Hitler never went beyond high school. After his secondary education, he briefly visited Vienna and eventually returned to Linz, where he worked as an artist to fend for himself. On the other hand, he wished he could study arts, and truth be told, he had the attributes required to succeed in it. But unfortunately, he couldn't secure admission into the academy to study fine arts. Yet he continued to live in isolation and earn the little he could from drawing advertisements and postcards, moving from one place to the other. The death of his father, school bullying, and social isolation all affected his development as a child. Due to this distorted upbringing, Hitler was already showing signs that would eventually define his later life: loneliness and a high level of secretiveness. His everyday living was a bohemian mode and staunch hatred for cosmopolitanism and the political and international parlance of Vienna. Hitler's entrance into the military. He moved to Munich in 1913 and was screened for military service. However, he was not shortlisted due to health classifications like physical vigor. In the wake of World War I, he wrote a petition to the Bavarian king, Louis III, to enlist him for service in the military. On that note, he was notified and shortlisted for 8 weeks of training. Afterward, he was deployed to Belgium in October 1914 as a member of the Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment. He participated in the First Battle of Ypres, served throughout the war for 2 years until he was wounded and gassed near Ypres. He was hospitalized at the end of the war, but while the war was still on, Hitler served courageously on the front line as the runner for the headquarters. This courage was soon to be rewarded with the Iron Cross, Second Class, and Iron Cross, First Class as a corporal in 1918, a rare feat to achieve in his days. For Hitler, it was an escape from his frustrated and aimless civilian life. As the military, in consonance with the battles he fought, he learned discipline and satisfying comradeship. This attested to his sounding belief in the heroic attributes that war provides. Soon after, he was discharged from the hospital. However, there was social chaos in Germany after their defeat. Hitler, in the bid to move on, took up political work in Munich around June 1919. As a political agent in the army, he was a member of a small German workers' party resident in Munich in September 1919. In 1920, he was adopted as the leader of the party's propaganda and then left the army to devote himself to his newly given role and to improving his stance in the political party, which was eventually renamed National Socialist Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, simply put, Nazi. Well, the conditions were ripe and the atmosphere supporting for the birth of such a party. Conditions such as the resentment born from the war losses, the difficulty to actualize peace, coupled with the economic regression on several sides, and overwhelming dissatisfaction could be felt. Following the development, a coup d'etat led by a few military officers was deployed, but failed to establish a right-wing leadership. However, Munich became a resting place for many dissatisfied citizens and military retirees that never wanted to return to civilian life. They were, however, adopted into the Nazi Party. One of the foremost men here was Ernst Röhm, who joined the party before Hitler did and was one of the strongest arms who facilitated Hitler's rise in the party. He recruited most of the men who Hitler used in attacking the socialists and communists, and also used in defense during meetings. Those men would later be reorganized into a private military squad known as Sturmabteilung. Röhm was able to leverage his terrorist tactics to secure support from the Bavarian government, and thus its army. He was a friend to Hitler. Both he and Hitler grew the party while Hitler became the leader after spotting ineffectiveness in some areas. The party grew from a handful of men into thousands. Hitler, through his dedicated and dynamic leadership of this party, attracted many skilled and powerful men, including some of those who are infamous, like Alfred Rosenberg, Rudolf Hess, Julius Streicher, Hermann Göring, and Johann Eckert, who was Hitler's mentor. Further, Hitler and his team of forceful men desired to bring the Bavarian government to its knees by declaring a national revolution throughout the state, but they were intercepted by the police and some military men. He was injured and sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, he only spent 9 months before he came out. Every problem and challenge he encountered along the way, he converted them into platforms to grow his political base. Hitler was that strategic. The early periods preceding World War II in history were a subtle show of how Adolf Hitler colorized the minds of the Nazis and other Germans, including the sitting president Hindenburg. His party was gaining ground, and he was gaining the trust of the citizens all along. No one suspected what was coming. Yes, it all led to a full-blown dictatorship. The craziest dictator in the 20th century. The period between 1933 and 1939 was remarked as the birth of Hitler's dictatorship. When Hitler got to power through an alliance with the presidency and actualizing the trust of the military, he enacted a full-blown dictatorship. He first got the president's permission for new elections, and following this was a decree overriding every form of freedom and intensifying the violence campaign. In less than 3 months, all labor unions, non-Nazi parties, and several other freedom-fighting parties ceased to exist, and even the limiting forces like the Catholic Center Party folded at the insistence of the Vatican. Contrary to the developments, Hitler never desired dictatorship as a modus operandi, but saw it as the only tool that will readily and quickly help him get his interests. He still believed that conservative ideas were still necessary if he would succeed and retain the backing of the then military. Everyone who stood in the way eventually got wiped out, and a dreaded example is the execution of Röhm and his serving lieutenant, Edmund Heinz, without trial on the Night of Long Knives. Other high-ranked officials who went down the drain included Gregor Strasser and Kurt von Schleicher. This was a last resort for Hitler in 1934, and this further boosted the military confidence in his ability to lead them. They would further pledge their allegiance to him in the coming days. Another boost was the economic progression and the fast decline of unemployment in Germany, which aligned with the world. However, Hitler took credit for this. This made his regime famous, coupled with the terror he wreaked on the people, making them amass 90% of the voters in a very short while. He indeed prevented anyone and any group from sufficiently developing the strength they needed to defeat him. Hitler's dictatorship and culmination in World War II. Hitler was determined to gain absolute authority so he could cleanse the world of all impurity, sending all he thought to not be Aryan origin to his concentration camps. Starting with political opponents and ending with Jews, he eliminated all he felt impure. One of his resounding quotes remains, "There are only 2 possibilities, either the victory of the Aryan or the annihilation of the Aryan, and the victory of the Jews," which reflected his staunch hatred for the Jews. He allied with nations, and one such is the Pact of Steel with Italy. He kept on advancing, gaining power, and attacking different nations. The Polish army would not have it easy with him and retaliated. Hitler was undaunted in his approach and further attacked Russia, which was one of the heaviest blows for Russia in history. Consequently, Japanese forces attacked the U.S. forces at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Hitler's overarching purpose for continuing the war despite defeat on several fronts was to exterminate the Jews from Germany, which was initially intended to be expulsion. His hatred for the Jews stemmed from his anti-Semitism perspective, another type of racism that was birthed during World War I. However, the Jews in Germany, Poland, and the Soviet Union were the most numerous victims killed during the war. The war would result in the death of over 6 million Jews in German-occupied Europe, among others. The travails of other people were somewhat less severe compared to the numbers exterminated in warfare. Above all, the most evil thing Hitler did to cleanse Germany was murdering disabled children by lethal drug overdoses and starvation. At the close of 1942, the defeat at Stalingrad, El Alamein, and America led to a turning point in the war, and Hitler's battle behavior changed. He refused the army to retreat and never visited devastated zones. He was excessively dependent on his doctor. In the end, he lost the power to react strongly in the face of misfortune. His relationship was strained with his army. His desperate officers and other anti-Nazi officials became aggressive and wanted to remove Hitler and negotiate peace with the West. Several assassinations were missed on Hitler between 1943 and 1944. However, the most successful was made on July 20th, 1944, when Colonel von Stauffenberg detonated a bomb at Hitler's headquarters at a conference in East Prussia. Hitler escaped but was badly injured, though he didn't bend for anyone even after being ousted from his headquarters. Attacking nations, destroying tribes, annihilating over 6 million Jews, pushing Germany into enmity with several leading nations of the world, crumbling economies, devastating his army, and finally committing suicide. He hated the Jews, saw them as global pollutants, and didn't mind disturbing the world's balance to see them exterminated. No sane man would ever have gone to such extremes. However, Hitler's was far from sane.